Well, it's wonderful to be together again and to again contemplate the Heart Sutra. And just a reminder, we have the Heart Sutra in 100,000 lines, in 14,000 lines, in 8,000 lines, and we have this pith, 3 or 4 paragraphs. So essentially, we're looking at a table of contents, and this references this great body of work. So that's why the more we understand what the concepts are pointing to, it's a much more meaningful prayer to recite. It's a reviewing of a vast Dharma presentation. So I'm going to go back to pictures again today. So today we're at I think it's only the second or third paragraph. Listen, Shariputra, all phenomena bear the mark of emptiness. Their true nature is the nature of no birth, no death, no being, no non-being, no defilement, no purity, no increasing, no decreasing. So this is what's known as comprehensively the 3 Dharma doors. And in terms of these 4 pairs, the 8 profundities. And so we are looking at last week, no defilement, no purity, and this week, no increasing and no decreasing. But essentially they go together because this is the 3rd Dharma door, which is classified as wishlessness. And that's a funny word to say out of context, but it means no hope, no fear, no attachment to an outcome or achievement, just looking at things as they are, not hoping for something different, not getting attached that they might be different. So I want to combine the work that we were doing last week to be very clear about it so we can put it together, no pure, no impure, with no increasing and no decreasing. So the skandha of mind that we call discernment has to do with how the mind works, and the mind sorts things. And it sorts in terms of differences. So we can look at this color wheel and we can see lots of different colors. And our mind will then name those colors and classify those colors. But that's a conceptual activity. So we could say, because of blue, there's red. Because of red, there's blue. Our mind sorts them, sees a difference, and then names them and classifies them. The problem is we take that discernment and turn it into judgment. And the judgment generally goes along the lines of pure and impure. So normally we wouldn't say, we might say red is wonderful and blue is not wonderful. But normally we wouldn't put a value judgment on the sorting process. That comes next when we sort into pure and impure. So in this section, Thich Nhat Hanh says, okay, let's look at inner being as interpenetration. We can't have red without blue. We can't have blue without red. That there's an interpenetration of qualities that is an aspect of interbeing. So when we look at this blue and red, we see that there's a spectrum where it is almost impossible to divide in simply blue and red. So, well, let's go back to this. So one of the quotes that he puts, one of his verses, the one who bows and pays respect and the one who receives the bow and the respect, both of us are empty. That is why communion is perfect. So from his perspective, he's talking about not a comparison, but an interpenetration. That from his perspective, the Buddha is made of non-Buddha elements, and we are made of Buddha elements. So there's this spectrum that is united in interbeing, which is why there is this interpenetration of, we might say, Buddha nature, even in the confused minds that we are now. So what's interesting about this, about these two together, no purity, no impurity, no increase and decreasing, and the movement from discernment to judgment, is we can start to misinterpret things or take these concepts and bring them in, confabulating our Judeo-Christian upbringing or our cultural assimilation. And there can be a sense of, well, this means we are part good and we are part bad. And that if we eliminate all the bad and just have the good, then we change into an enlightened being. Or if we increase the bad, we turn into an evil being, like, let's say, Hitler and the Dalai Lama. From the perspective that we're looking at in terms of understanding the difference between the relative and the absolute, we need to understand that what we're talking about is more about an inherent nature and a temporary adventitious confusion. So from the perspective of the Dharmakaya, we could say Hitler and the Dalai Lama are the same. They both have perfect Buddha nature. Their Buddha nature cannot be harmed. No matter how confused one's mind is, we still have an inherent perfection. The confusion is something that drops away. And of course, there can be so dense a confusion, it's like concrete. Yet, inherently, all beings with mind also possess Buddha nature, also are pervaded by the Dharmakaya. So it's not about increasing good and decreasing bad. It's about seeing the inherent perfection of our mind and allowing the confusion to dissolve. The confusion doesn't have an inherent nature. It didn't exist from the beginning. It came about due to causes and conditions. Let's see if you can see it. So there's a sense of some classic examples when we're looking at inherent nature. So let's look at the dirty water and the clear water, and no example is perfect, but from this example, we can start to contemplate the inherent nature of the water is this perfect clarity. that the dirt in the water will settle, and that there can be a gradual clearing of the obscurations of the water, going from polluted to clear. And so we can see that actually the nature of the water is this clarity. So from the perspective of the clear water, it doesn't get more pure or less pure. There is a pollution that settles and dissolves. Okay, another classic example is stained cloth. So if we think of a stained cloth, there isn't any increase or decrease in the cloth. There is a stain that can be removed. So the nature of the cloth hasn't changed. It's just that the stains are removed. And another classic example is space. So space, from the perspective of this example, the clarity doesn't increase or decrease. There is activity that covers, that occupies the space and changes and moves and dissolves. But the clarity and perfection of the sky is not affected by what is passing through the sky. So let's go back to this quote. So what we're talking about is, it's not as though you have to increase your goodness and then one day you'll be all goodness and a different person and an enlightened person, and you're decreasing all the badness as though it's scaled that changes you. It's rather, you have a inherent perfection and the confusion is dissolving through your practice and your understanding and your gradual deepening of the combination of the two. And this gets very important when we begin to look at things from the perspective of Vajrayana and let's say Guru Yoga and Buddha nature. So in the Vajrayana, in the Tibetan system, there's a lot of emphasis on receiving empowerment and blessings from the Guru and understanding more about Buddha nature, which we may go into next year, which is that inherent perfection. And if we don't understand that the inherent perfection is also emptiness, we get attached to an ego or an I or a personhood who is enlightened, who has Buddha nature, who is becoming more and more virtuous, let's say. We want to understand that the guru-disciple relationship and empowerment system and devotional meaning of the minds only happens because of emptiness and because of the boundarylessness of emptiness. So when we are in relationship, let's say, to His Holiness or the Dalai Lama, and we're practicing, our Buddha nature, which is pervasive and marked with emptiness, is responding to the sameness of the Buddha nature of the Guru, and is resonating and merging. There's that interpenetration of the Buddha and the Bodhisattva, or the person walking the Dharma path. So I'm going to read 2 verses. Let's go back to Thich Nhat Hanh's beautiful the one who bows and pays respect, let's say our side, and the one who receives the bow and the respect, both of us are empty. That is why the communion is perfect. So this might be a description of Guru Yoga or an empowerment, but it takes us out of I am good, you are bad, or you are good, I am bad, and I want to get better, to our inherent perfection that is currently covered by many aspects of confusion, still is a spark of the absolute that resonates and is inseparable from the absolute, whether we call the absolute the Buddha or we call the absolute of the Guru. Then from the perspective of the Uttara Tantra, which is the basis of Vajrayana and the basis of Mahamudra, this famous quote, "The body of complete enlightenment is all pervasive." So we can say the body of complete enlightenment is all pervasive because it is empty. Suchness is undivided. It is boundaryless, no increasing, no decreasing. It can't be made small into something that can grow bigger or get smaller. All beings possess the potential, therefore, all beings possess Buddha nature. It is because we possess the potential that one day we can become enlightened. In the relative, we are growing in our understanding, we're growing in our meditation practice, we're growing in sorting out virtuous action from non-virtuous action. But these are all veils that are wearing away and uncovering this inner perfection that is beyond conceptual, beyond causes and conditions. One example is you couldn't take a piece of granite and turn it into a diamond. It doesn't have that potential. Whereas you can take a piece of coal and it will become a diamond. So similarly, because we have the potential for enlightenment. And it's really wonderful to sort of step aside from this judgment quality as opposed to discrimination, of turning things into good and evil, because it has such a deep effect on how we regard ourselves. If we start to regard ourselves as Buddhas in the process of becoming Buddhas, or Buddhas to be, that are removing confusion like we're removing stains from a cloth, that a Buddha to be that is allowing layers of obstructions to dissolve with greater and greater clarity, then the thought is we're returning to our true nature that has always been there. Our Buddha nature is unchanging and inherent. It simply becomes more evident as confusion dissolves. It's not that it gets bigger or smaller. It has always been perfect, and we're uncovering it, returning to it. And then you start to see with this as a basis for creating a life, you start to make choices that are in alignment with uncovering your Buddha nature. Not good and evil, not good or bad, not I'm unworthy, will never be as good as. It's breathing in, there is an inherent perfection that through my choices I am uncovering, or I'm creating denser covering. And this can happen because of this understanding that the relative is impermanent, changing, empty of a solitary, individual, unchanging self. Rather, there is a interbeing, interconnectedness, a pervasiveness of the enlightenment body or Buddha nature or Dharmakaya. So we could say Dharmakaya and emptiness are also words that carry the same meaning, but are explained from many different perspectives. So this is why that aspect of the sentence, no defilement, no purity, no increase and no decrease, has such a profound contemplation, which points to how we understand progressing along the path, the levels of a bodhisattva in increasing clarity, and the final liberation of the wisdom mind or enlightened mind, inseparable from Dharmakaya emptiness that has the flavor or perfume of compassion. So, more to think about. Let's take a few minutes to think about how the culture we live in, the systems we live in, encourage judgment into good and evil, and how that then affects a confusion about the nature of our minds and how we see the Dharma path at the beginning, and how we can open up that path to not good and bad parts of ourselves, but rather the obscurations dissolving and the inherent nature emerging. So let's sit with this for a few minutes. So if we think about, I'm combining good and bad in terms of parts of myself, and if I get rid of the bad, there's just the good, and then I will become enlightened. That's a contradiction in terms of what enlightenment is. There's no I that's going to become enlightened. We're talking about the I as a illusory construction, whereas if we think of an inherent perfection that's covered by layers of confusion, it's like taking the lampshade off a lamp. Then the light is all pervasive. And from this perspective, there's no I that is shining. There is just the radiance of light. So it's many different examples, none of which, since they're conceptual, can hold the whole Dharmakaya that we're pointing to, but each of the examples gives you a way to start seeing the difference between inherent perfection and increasing good and bad. Increasing good self and decreasing bad self, as opposed to jumping out of the concept of self. So it's really a good question to ask yourself, how am I understanding this? How much is my cultural lens affecting what I understand? Do I see the Dharma path of progression of me becoming a better person that one day is an enlightened person, or all ignorance being clarified, dropping away, and the interdependent, impermanent, interconnected, interbeing arising or inseparable or boundarylessness with the Dharmakaya. Okay, let's say a dedication so that we can let go of the live stream and have a conversation. Bodhicitta, excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher.